Minister. Bill English.
Mr Speaker, can I start by acknowledging two of my colleagues, Sam Lotuinga, just the third Pacific Member of Parliament to become a government minister, a man of real capacity that will benefit not just his community but New Zealand. And can also acknowledge Joe Hayes, who the Labor Party may not know well, but they should understand was the person who helped us win the party vote in Dunedin South. With an excellent campaign on the ground in heartland Labor territory, increasing the National Party vote by thousands, and she is a welcome addition to the caucus.
Claire Curran as her opponent.
Even with Claire Curran as her opponent. Mr Speaker, can also acknowledge the leadership of the Prime Minister. I think in his address today he demonstrated again that his leadership through these last 5 or 6 years for New Zealand has been critical to lifting New Zealanders' sense of confidence and aspiration, their greater sense of self-reliance and resilience, which has seen this country come through very difficult economic times in about as good a shape as it possibly could. And he has helped lay a platform for this country and its families to enjoy the benefits of one of the better growing economies in the developed world. And what a sharp contrast with the Leader of the Opposition. Nothing's really changed in 12 months with Labor. 12 months ago they had an unpopular leader who was going nowhere, and Grant Robertson was undermining him. And the same thing is going on now. Quite apart from the huge difference in their speeches, the Prime Minister enjoys the support of his caucus. And the Labor caucus is not enjoying David Cunliffe, and that shows up in their support, because you see what we heard was a speech about the kind of country and government that Labor and David Cunliffe wish they were campaigning in. They wish income inequality was growing, but it isn't. It's not growing. The facts are clear. The poor are not falling behind. The middle class are not flatlining. Real incomes are growing. The most vulnerable have been protected, and income inequality is stable to slightly improving. But on Planet Cunliffe, something quite different is happening, what he wishes was happening. He wishes he was campaigning against the government that was hostile to the most vulnerable. But of course it isn't. We've borrowed billions of dollars to protect the most vulnerable through a recession. He wishes there was no innovation in the economy. But in fact we are seeing a blossoming of New Zealand's IT and manufacturing sector, public floats, international deals, you name it. He wishes there was a manufacturing crisis. What happened to that select committee? But there isn't. Despite the fact, in fact, because they declared a crisis, manufacturing started doing well. He wishes the regions were weak. But actually, the data shows very clearly the regions have been doing better than the metropolitan areas. Again, because Labor declared that they were going poorly. He wishes that public confidence was on its knees, but it isn't. More New Zealanders believe more positively in the aspirational future of this country than at any time I can remember in 25 years of public life. And they know that it's got a solid basis. But on Planet Cunliffe, there's no confidence. People are fearful. People have no hope. And you can hear it, can't you? He stood in front of the mirror and said that line and enjoyed it. But, Mr. Speaker, it's just not true. That's all. It sounds really good. It's just not true. He wishes that all those people who have traditionally supported the Labor Party in the social service sector, iwi, churches, he wishes the teachers, he wishes they were marching in the street. And what did they do last week? They applauded the government's education policy in a way I can't recall for a national government in a long time in this parliament. Those people who used to feed the Labor Party cases of public service breakdown are working every day with this government and its agencies to improve our communities, to make our communities safer, to lift the achievement of those who have underachieved, to reduce reoffending rates of our prisoners, to reduce welfare dependency, because the policies of this government in those areas are meritorious, they're thoughtful, they're progressive, and they're working. And so again, on Planet Cunliffe, all those people would be supporting the Labor Party. In fact, they might go and vote for them in the booth if Labor can achieve its brilliant new strategy, which is get Labor voters to vote Labor. That's the strategy. Get Labor voters to vote Labor. Well, I can tell them we're doing a better job of getting Labor voters to vote National. And that's why we can go into this election year with some confidence. And Mr. Speaker, well, I used to think it was Planet Labor, but I increasingly think it's Planet Cunliffe. I think there's two planets now, actually. There's Planet Labor, which is still sitting there pining for the return of Helen Clark and Michael Cullen, leaders that they took seriously, and the country did for a while too. And then there's Planet Cunliffe, which is a noble and lonely place to be. There's no doubt about that, a noble and lonely place. And it's the bad start policy that's highlighted that gap enormously, the announcements in the last week or so. David Cunliffe's policy around payments to families is based on the idea that he has saved $1.5 billion by not pursuing promises he made that would cost $1.5 billion. Well, at least the Greens weren't to the trouble of running their money through the photocopier. On Planet Cunliffe, you just imagine it.
That's right.
It's like going into the shop and saying, it's a bargain. I saved money because it was going to be $200 for the running shoes, but they're on sale at $100. So I've saved $100 so I can go and spend that on something else. The $1.5 billion does not exist in the government forecasts, and so it's not available for saving, and the media and David Cunliffe and the Labor Party have only figured that out today. The other thing they've said today is that in order to enforce international tax obligations on companies like Facebook, they might ban them from New Zealand. They might ban Facebook from New Zealand. Well, we know that works. We know that works because they've done it in North Korea. And it's worked there. Well, there's no income, so they pay no tax. So that's how they do it. Get rid of the income, and then they get rid of the tax problem. Mr. Speaker, the Labor Party is dealing with the New Zealand public who are suspicious of any cash splash, as we've seen in the last few days, but they're too lazy to deal with the problems that are actually about our most vulnerable. Getting immunisation rates up, protecting children from violence, lifting educational achievement. Mr. Speaker, the government will continue to advance its business growth agenda this year. It will continue to advance its prudent fiscal management. It will continue to advance a program of microeconomics reform to support jobs and incomes, because jobs will come faster and incomes will grow faster under an ongoing national government. Our process of considered and consistent change, working closely with the community and the business community, is starting to yield real benefits. Communicating openly, being accountable for those policies has built real confidence that the national government has its finger on the pulse of what's required, the political will to do what's required, and the leadership to take the public along with it. Mr Speaker, and that is why we can face this motion of confidence in the Parliament with some real confidence.
Mr Speaker.
Jacinda Ardern.
Mr Speaker, I want